Imagine you started working in 1740, before the United States existed, before the steam engine. You've worked every single year since, through every war, every depression, every economic revolution, right up to today, 2026. You still wouldn't have earned what the average S&P 500 CEO made last year. CEO pay in 2024, $18.9 million average. Median worker pay, around $49,000. That's a ratio of 281 to 1. At median wages, matching 1 year of that CEO's compensation takes 284 years of continuous labor. This isn't a political argument, it's arithmetic. And that number is the first piece of a much larger pattern, one that has quietly turned hard work as a reliable path to wealth into something that no longer adds up. Here's the assumption almost everyone is still operating under. If you work hard, stay consistent, and put in the hours, the system rewards you. That logic is behind every hustle culture post, every "I started from nothing" success story, every piece of career advice anyone's ever given you. But that assumption treats the relationship between effort and income as if it's still intact, as if the same rules that applied in 1970 still apply now. They don't. Three separate forces have each, in their own way, broken the math. When you look at them together, the conclusion is uncomfortable. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to 1965. In 1965, the CEO to worker pay ratio at large American firms sat at 21 to 1. Not equal, but within a range where effort could still move the needle. Someone in middle management could, over a career, close a meaningful portion of that gap through performance. By 2024, that ratio hit 632 to 1 at the 350 largest firms. Some companies are even more extreme. Lowe's, 659 to 1. Home Depot, 443 to 1. That's a 30-fold expansion of the gap over 6 decades. What drove it wasn't productivity. CEO pay tracked stock prices, not company performance. About 95% of executive compensation today comes from stock options and equity grants. Instruments that scale with market capitalization, not with how well the company runs or how hard anyone works. Workers at those same firms got 3 to 3.5% annual raises. CEOs got 6 to 7%. The gap doesn't just exist, it compounds. A worker's entire lifetime of labor, 40 years at $50,000 a year, generates around $2 million in total earnings. That's less than 2 months of the CEO's annual compensation. The system isn't rewarding effort differently. It's rewarding a different variable entirely. Proximity to capital allocation decisions. That's the first force. Here's the second. In 2025, companies using generative AI saw real productivity gains. The Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis found workers saved an average of 2.2 hours per week. MIT studies showed up to 40% improvements in certain task performance. Some complex task completion times dropped by 80%. This sounds like good news for workers. More output, less time. That should translate to higher wages. It didn't. Revenue per employee in high AI exposure sectors grew from 8.5% to 27% between 2018 and 2024. Wages in those same sectors moved around 4 to 5%. The productivity gains went almost entirely to corporate profits. This is what economists call decoupling, when value creation and labor compensation stop moving together. It's not new. Since 1973, U.S. productivity has grown 140%. Worker pay has grown 45%. AI didn't create that gap, it accelerated it. Here's why the math gets particularly brutal at scale. AI processes tasks at near zero marginal cost after the initial development investment. One instance can outperform 100 workers in certain tasks at roughly 1% of the ongoing cost. Human labor represents about 60% of a company's variable costs. AI's variable costs approach zero. When a company can produce the same or greater output with fewer human hours, there's no competitive pressure to pass those savings back to the workforce. The savings go up. Worker leverage goes down. The third force is the one most people feel but can't quite name. Even if wages did grow faster, The assets those wages are supposed to buy have inflated at a separate, faster rate. In 1970, the median American home cost around $25,000. Median hourly wages were about $3.60. That means buying a house cost roughly 6,900 hours of labor, about 3.3 years full-time. By 2026, median home price, $428,000. Median hourly wage, $32. Hours required, 13,375. 6.4 years. Housing prices have risen 17 times since 1970. Wages have risen about 9 times. The hours needed to buy a house nearly doubled. College tuition over the last 2 decades rose 84% after inflation. Wages for college graduates rose about 5%. Healthcare costs have grown faster than wages every decade since 1970. The things that build long-term financial security, a home, an education, healthcare, are inflating at rates wages can't structurally match. This is the asset-labor gap. You can earn more in nominal terms and still fall further behind in real terms, because the finish line moves faster than the paycheck. So is any of this solvable through individual effort? Here's where the data gets more nuanced. There are corners of the economy where effort still connects directly to income, and in some cases, connects strongly. Information security analysts earn $125,000 median, with 29% projected job growth through 2034. Elevator installers, $99,000 median, with top earners exceeding $150,000. Commercial electricians, $85,000 to $95,000, with wages rising 5 to 7% annually. These roles don't require 4-year degrees. They reward skill, certification, and showing up in markets where the labor supply is thin. Construction added 130,000 jobs in January 2026 alone. Trade wages are rising at 5 to 7% per year, against a 3% overall average. In these sectors, effort still scales. But look at what actually makes those fields work. It's not just hard work, it's scarcity. There aren't enough elevator technicians. There aren't enough commercial electricians. The labor supply is tight enough that workers retain real negotiating power. The moment that scarcity disappears, through automation, through a surge in apprenticeships, through anything that increases supply, the wages follow it down. Scarcity protected those wages, not effort. Here's what the math is telling us. Hard work was never the primary variable that determined wealth. It was always access to capital, to asset appreciation, to proximity to the people who make allocation decisions. For a period in the mid-20th century, wages tracked productivity closely enough that this distinction didn't matter much in practice. The system worked well enough that effort felt causal. That window closed. The pay ratio expanded 30-fold. AI captured productivity gains before they reached paychecks. Asset prices outran wages by nearly a factor of 2. 3 separate mechanisms, operating independently, converged on the same result. The link between input and output, between hours worked and wealth accumulated, has been structurally severed. Work hard and you'll get ahead isn't bad advice because people aren't trying hard enough. It's bad advice because it describes a system that no longer exists at scale. The trades workers earning $130,000 a year aren't proof the system works. They're the exception that explains the rule. Scarcity is now the last protection labor has. And scarcity, by definition, isn't available to everyone. The math doesn't care how early you wake up.